Pants, she is wearing yoga pants. She doesn't even know the couple that just came through. I look at her face, which is bright red, my hand is still on her boob, and I pull it back like I just got bit by a snake. I immediately call for my supervisor, who comes over and asks what's wrong, and I explain the situation to her. That's when my supervisor covers her mouth in what I believe is utter shock. After groping this woman that I thought was a boy, I call my supervisor over. I tell her the situation and she covers her mouth. At first, I thought she was absolutely mortified, but then I realized she's trying not to laugh. She takes a minute to pull herself together, tells me to go take a break, and finishes screening the passenger herself. Once that was done, I apologize to the passenger. She tells me it's fine, that it wasn't the first time she was mistaken for a boy, and she probably should have said something before I started touching her. I leave her alone and go talk to my supervisor to figure out how exactly fired I am. She tells me to calm down, that it was just an honest mistake, and that she has my back if the passenger files an official complaint, but that probably won't happen and I shouldn't be worried. That reassured me a little, but I still groped a woman and ruined Christmas, so I feel like an absolute monster. I swallow my shame and finish my shift, then I go to the airport proper to find some food because I just finished a 12-hour shift and there's no way I have energy to cook dinner. I saw my hapless victim sitting at her gate waiting for her flight. I went up to her to apologize again and saw that the flight had been delayed until morning. It was about 11 at night at this point. I apologized again, she says it's fine, and I ask her if she's planning to stay the whole night. She said she has to because all the hotels in the area are booked. I tell her that I'm getting some dinner and I offer to get her some food as well. After all, I already got to second base. I think it's only fair that I buy her dinner. She agrees and we go to one of the restaurants that's open late, get some food and start eating. She said she gets mistaken for a boy a lot and it's not a big deal. We ended up talking for a few hours before I finally told her that I had to get home and apologize again for the accidental molestation. She said that all is forgiven if I promise to take her on a real date when she gets back. I agreed, she gave me her number and I immediately started texting her when I got home. We kept talking until her flight finally left. When she got back, I picked her up at the airport and a few days later took her on a real date that I promised her. We just celebrated our 1-year anniversary. My father married my stepsister's mother when I was 4 and she was 3. We've lived together most of our lives in our family. She and I were extremely close. She developed cancer when she was 14 and was sick for about 2 years. She's since made a full recovery though. During that time, my parents became understandably overprotective. They also asked a lot of me. I quit my extracurriculars so that I could get a job, the money went towards her medical bills, and so that I could drive her to her appointments. I didn't go to dances and any fun activities I did needed to include her. I did almost all of this willingly with the exception of having to quit my high school volleyball team. I did throw a bit of a tantrum about that but was swiftly punished. Anyhow, I go to college and meet my ex, Ben, when I'm in junior. We fall in love, blah blah blah. He and I move in together when we graduate, so we've been living together for about 3 years. We were serious until July when I walked into my bedroom and saw him screwing my sister. I broke it off, tears were shed, and he moved out. My sister apologized at first but then backed off. I thought she was giving me space, but last week she called and asked if we could meet up. She told me that she and Ben were in love and were just telling me as a courtesy before they started posting photos online. Distraught, I left her in the restaurant by herself and did not pay my portion of the bill. She later Venmoed me asking for the money. She told my parents, who then called me to their house telling me how disappointed they are in me for not supporting my sister's relationship with Ben. They brought up the fact that because she had cancer as a teenager, she never learned proper social etiquette and has a hard time meeting people. I don't buy this, in part because I've seen her socialize just fine, and since we spent a good chunk of time together when she was sick, that would mean that I would also have bad social skills as well by that logic. They then told me that if I don't accept my sister and Ben's relationship, they may have to go no contact with me. I reminded them that I'm also their daughter and they should understand my point of view, but they're adamant that this is about me being jealous of her. Now no one in my immediate family is talking to me and I'm getting messages from aunts and uncles and cousins telling me that I'm an asshole and selfish bitch. It also turns out that my sister's 4 months pregnant. This means they were screwing each other for longer than I even guessed. Apparently my parents are so adamant that I forgive her because I'm already ruining their experience for their first grandchild. Am I the asshole for not accepting my sister's relationship with my ex despite her having cancer as a teenager? My husband and I started dating when we were 13 and I left him 15 years later. He suggested having an open marriage and I didn't really want it, but I felt like it was a trap to say yes. I agreed after him having brought it up a few times over the last few years. He said he didn't actually want to have sex with other women himself, he just found it extremely erotic to have a wife who would sleep with other men and he wanted to be a part of that. I said okay fine, as long as you're actually okay with this, and because we'll be a team on this, I'll give it a go. He had been the only man that I'd ever slept with, so I was very hesitant about this. After I was knee deep in exploring his fetish with him, he began to trickle the truth. He started by saying he might want to do the same and find a woman to sleep with himself, then that he might be polyamorous, to admitting that he had been in love with my best friend for a decade and it had been eating at him since we were 17, and now that we're part of this lifestyle 10 years later, he can be honest about it. I'm absolutely positive he chose these series of events exactly as he did so that I'd be a hypocrite if I opposed any of it. However, what he didn't expect is that I'd meet someone special. Someone I enjoyed talking to and someone who made me feel entirely different than I'd felt with my husband my whole life. I left my husband telling him that we needed to talk. I said that I don't think we're working anymore and that I'm not happy living this way. He asked if I still loved him and I said not like I used to. And that was it. He was emotional of course, but I think he saw it coming. My husband tried to start a purely FWB type of relationship with my best friend after our divorce. They were both lonely and kept seeing each other on dating sites. They asked my blessing first, but that's when I told her it wasn't purely innocent on his end because of what he told me in the year prior. I hadn't told her yet because until that point it didn't matter. And she was horrified. He had promised her that he didn't have any feelings for her, so it wouldn't be weird, and convinced her that this would be super casual and platonic, when in actuality he was deeply in love with her and trying to manipulate her. They haven't talked since. Sucks to suck. Imagine you're 11 years old and walking to the bus stop in the morning when you're suddenly abducted. For the next 18 years, you're held captive by your abductors and hope that one day you'll be free. This was the reality for a young girl named JC Lee Dugard. She was taken just outside of her home in South Lake Tahoe, California on the morning of June 10th, 1991. A man approached her in his car as she crossed the street and asked for directions. Before she could even register his question, he uses a taser on her and she's paralyzed. That's when he grabs her and throws her in his car. JC's stepfather actually saw the kidnapping happen from their garage window and attempted to catch up to the car on his bicycle but was outrun. He immediately called the authorities who, with the help of the FBI, dogs, aircrafts, and hundreds of people, searched for JC, but to no avail. No one could find her and all the leads went cold. She was locked in a makeshift recording studio by convicted rapists and his wife, Philip and Nancy Garrido, in their backyard. On the first night, her abductor showers with her and handcuffs her. That night, she cries herself to sleep. Over the next 18 years, JC is completely dependent on him for every basic human need. They renamed her Alyssa, and she was repeatedly abused by Philip over the years. He would take substances and stay up for nights on end, forcing JC to fulfill his fantasies. Over time, he stops handcuffing her and starts to trust her more. When JC's 13, Philip Garrido is actually arrested by police for possession of substances and is locked up for a month. When he returns, he has an ankle monitor. Still, no one knows that he's holding JC. A year later, JC is 14 and has gained weight. She feels uncomfortable and is soon told by the Garridos that she's pregnant. She gave birth to her first daughter at the age of 14 and her second daughter at the age of 17. Both of her daughters are forced to live with her in confinement as she does her best to raise and take care of them. During this time, she writes in a journal about her feelings and wondered if her family members were ever searching for her. I'm 24 and I've been dating my boyfriend for 5 years now. We grew up together as neighbors and were friends for a couple years before dating. I love him so much and I want to marry him. His family is great and I adore them all, and he's great with my family too. He also formed a great relationship with my younger sister who's 21. The issue is that I think their bond is too close. My boyfriend and I live together, but he spends a lot of time with her. Albeit, I am sort of busy. I'm currently in grad school for engineering, so I have to go to my classes. My boyfriend works full time. My sister is currently taking a gap year, but that 1 year has extended from when she was 18. She comes over when I'm in seminars and classes. They have tons of inside jokes and share the same sense of humor and taste in movies. It makes me feel left out, but when I try to include myself, they both stop being so enthusiastic and act like it's super awkward to have me there. My sister and I were close growing up, but started drifting when I went to uni. When my boyfriend isn't there and I talk to her, she becomes kind of cold and sometimes says rude things. Once she told me to my face that I'm not good enough for him and that he deserves better, which made me cry for a couple days. He also gets her gifts for the most random achievements, like he got her a present for making it through the week, even though she doesn't even do anything. She currently isn't working or trying to pursue a hobby or interest. She's just taking it easy, in her own words. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad my boyfriend and sister are friends, but my major problem is that my boyfriend tells her everything. Literally everything. He tells her things that he doesn't tell me and talks to her about me and our relationship. She knows all of our issues and good parts to a level of detail that I wouldn't even tell my closest friends or parents. She even knows the grades I got on my midterms and finals and what I think about my manager. I work part-time to contribute to our apartment, but also get paid for my research, which goes towards our needs as well, which I feel is unnecessary for her to know since I didn't tell her myself. I asked him to step back a bit and stop telling her things about me and our relationship, but he was shocked and told me that I'm an asshole for even requesting it. Now I feel guilty, so am I the asshole? Part 2, my boyfriend tells my sister everything. I set up nanny cams in hidden spots in our bedroom and living room area in our apartment. Today happens to be my birthday and I just turned 25. D, my closest friend, wanted to take me on a day trip yesterday. My boyfriend agreed and said that we do something the next day on my actual birthday. I told him that I'd be out from 8 in the morning and I'd be home by 8 or 9 p.m. D took me out, but she noticed I was feeling a bit off. I was still thinking about something shady going on between my boyfriend and my sister. I ended up spilling everything while we were eating lunch. D was outraged on my behalf and agreed that something was off. She asked if I wanted to cut our day short and drop back home to see if anything was happening and convinced me by saying that it's better to find out today than tomorrow. I realized we could have checked the nanny cams, but for some reason we forgot about them in the heat of the moment. Honestly, I'm kind of glad I didn't check because I would have started ugly crying in public. I'm guessing most of you know what happened. We drove back home around 4 p.m. I caught them literally in the act. Why were they doing it at 4 p.m.? I don't even know. I just kind of stood there with my arms folded and I hope I had a badass resting bitch face. Although maybe it was more like trying not to cry face. My boyfriend gave me a whole "it was an accident" spiel. I just ignored him and started packing my things. Thank God our lease was up for renewal within a month. He begged me and eventually yelled at me for packing up. The funny thing is, I bought most of the furniture and supplies. So, me being slightly petty, packed as much as I could. Dee helped me and we loaded everything up in her car. We left some stuff I couldn't fit, but I'll go back for that later. The whole time, my sister was sitting stoically wrapped up in a robe on my couch. We went back to Dee's house and I had a breakdown. Dee, the angel that she is.